Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, the hostess with the mostest. Big round of applause for the current poobah of Frasier, Sejan Sarwick. Sejan.
Is that a Beetlejuice reference? I forget where that line comes
I'm
from.
pretty sure it's a Beetlejuice reference.
Yeah,
And if we say it one more time, we'll ruin the podcast. How's that? That's how we should do it. Until the sequel comes out, we should start off every episode saying his name twice and then see if we F ourselves over.
Just edging him,
yeah, right? Like, because he's sitting there in his grave and he's like, oh my God, one more time, and I'm ready. Or he's mad at us. It could be one of those situations where he's waiting in the waiting room still, and if we were to pull him out of the waiting room, he'd lose his spot. See, that gives us the power over the character.
Oh, no.
Who's the... Woo! This was an interesting path that I decided to go down. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Say Report. We're back after being off last week for reasons that I will not share because it's not my information to share. But if the other person who's here on microphone wanted to share it, that's his prerogative.
The problem is that when you tantalize it like that, it sounds like I was doing something really cool and interesting and not just sitting in bed with COVID.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to... You got to build people up and then break them down. That's how you live in the modern world, right? No expectations. Ooh,
yeah.
That water was really
man.
good.
I went through round 2, baby. Woo! Fuck
I know.
me.
I can't woo for you. I'm sorry. I can't woo for that. I woo for you being better.
Thank you.
But I cannot woo for the fact that you had to go through it. We missed out on some stuff that we're gonna production meeting. So if you watched Clerks, we're gonna figure out what we're gonna do. I have a bananas plan, but I can't share it on the show because CJ might shoot it down. I'm flying pretty close to the sun with this idea, is what I can say to you and yours.
All right. Yeah, no, man, but doing better. Definitely had the 7-day cycle go, and it was not pretty. I don't know, but I spent most of that time just like honestly asleep. You know, I'm the kind of guy that like when I'm sick in general, like I my biggest like my hope is that I could just kind of just sleep it off, right? Like just stay in bed for 24 hours and be okay after that. You know, so it's a lot of just I will get up, grab some food, and then crawl back to bed type stuff, right? Man, it was even worse with this. I was lucky if I was up for 10 minutes every 6 hours, just enough time for me to like get something in me, some saltines and some ginger ale, hit the head, and then head back to bed. It was just basically all I did for about 4 or 5 days.
So, that was going to be my question is, you've had COVID before. This was not your first experience with the disease. When did you get it? During the big pandemic, or was it a little bit later? I don't know your schedule.
So right kind of in the middle of when things started to quote unquote calm down the first time and places started to really kind of slowly reopen. You know, there was kind of that move where people were like sick of things being closed and blah blah blah. And we're not going to get into the politics of that, but essentially living out here in Utah, you were more likely to find yourself in dangerous COVID situations than not, shall I say?
Well, I had to get my sweet dirty soda and my crumble cookies, Sejan.
Yeah. Well, so sure enough, you know, especially because they stock those places with a bunch of 14-year-old kids. They
stocking them with 14-year-old kids. That sounds a little Nickelodeon, but I know what you mean.
It ain't too far from it, from all the shit that came out about those places.
Oh,
anyway, yeah. So like, so we had caught it in that time, right? And it was kind of one of those things where in Utah, I can't speak for out of state in terms of that, but it became kind of the story of that time. There was a wave in the state where everybody suddenly caught it. Surprise, surprise, because kids started going back to school, people started going back to work, people started going back to, you know, shopping and movies and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so we had caught it in that kind of wave. But at that time, we had been vaccinated, we had been boosted twice, we were still practicing social distancing and having masks on, but as we know, that stuff is deterrent, but not necessarily going to stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
This thing. So luckily, because we had been, you know, obeying all the rules, like we had not really gotten hit the worst, right? Definitely some repercussions from that, in that we're all learning about like COVID in general, meaning that like nobody is truly okay after they have it. But anyway, I would say that at that time, we got hit bad, but it was not the worst that people even in our immediate circles had ever gotten hit.
Mhm.
Um, and then this time, I would say in terms of mitigation, we did great. Again, I still, mask up from time to time, depending on what situations I'm going to be in. I think I mentioned that we had gone to Disney on Ice a couple of weeks ago, and we had all made sure to sit in a place that was far removed from all the other people and things like that. And there was all sorts of things about trying to keep safe for that sort of stuff, right? And,
Yeah.
and blah blah blah. So this time around, nobody in our direct circle had it, and so like nobody in our direct circle got it, because as soon as I started feeling weird, my immediate response nowadays is just quick, take a COVID test, right? Like the second like I get sniffles, I'm just like, well, the first thing I'm gonna do is take a test, because I need to make sure it's not this, and then I can deal with whatever it is after that. So we caught it early. I locked myself in my room. The way that my situation works, that was really easy. I just kind of stuck to my room for my week and a half, and then once I started testing negative, was able to come back out and emerge into the world again.
Like a butterfly. The wings do look great on you,
Yeah.
Siegen.
Yeah. So I was able to kind of keep it to myself. So I'll at least say that was okay. But in terms of what I actually went through this time, man, this was like turbocharged, like all of the worst shit that you'd heard about. Not like in terms of pain or like illness parts of it. Like it is part of the illness, but like my dreams, for instance. You've heard about how people were having some pretty weird, vivid nightmares on COVID, and man, that was like that to the max. Or like in terms of sleep, like the idea that people were just getting, hugely fatigued. I literally could not wake up for longer than 10-15 minutes without feeling like I need to get back in bed and like slip for like 6 hours at a time type stuff. Like it was just wild this time around. So in a weird way, it was one of those things where it was just like, this didn't feel like COVID. And like after 2, 3, 4 years of it floating around and mutating, I don't know how this shit works. I don't know how we have still classified this as COVID-19, but like that's what it was.
I mean, that was going to be my question is, based on your experience, would you still categorize it, from your own opinion, from where you were standing, as COVID-19?
I mean, the thing is that if not, all the testing that would have happened that proved that I had COVID-19 and to stay away from people, I have questions about that then.
Well, I mean, and that's the question that I have, like, honestly.
Yeah, like everything that happened to me is definitely stuff that is associated with COVID-19. It's just not what I had the first time I had it. And then in terms of testing, everything was saying, yeah, you got COVID. So like in more ways, I almost wonder if what I had last time was actually COVID. And we've kind of wondered that, because like there's all this weird shit about like if you take the tests, like there's variations on what a positive can look like and things like that. And last time we treated it as a pretty clear positive, right? And like we have the antibodies in our system, so it does say that we definitely did have COVID at some point, blah blah blah. But there was always kind of this little bit of just like, because we had not got hit as hard as some of our other friends did, as some family had done, like we were just always like, man, was that COVID? We'll never really know for sure, but I'm glad we treated it that way. It was the safest thing to do. We did the right thing, all that stuff. This time around, it almost is more like, okay, this is definitely COVID.
Wow. I mean, for me, it's not like I got it, but Bader Meinhof of it all, Larry David in the penultimate episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm finally got COVID.
Well, so I'm not surprised, right? Wasn't that kind of part of the whole bit for this season, from what I understand?
Was going to be, yeah. I mean, and then it felt so much like stories that you have told me, because then he ended up giving it to Bruce Springsteen because of a water cup mix-up. A water cup 3-card Monty, as they called it in that. And I thought about how there were people were going to go see Bruce Springsteen in your family, and then they couldn't because he got ill. The whole 9th episode of season 12 of Curb Your Enthusiasm felt so much like these are just Siegen stories. I had to watch the credits twice to make sure you hadn't contributed in some way.
I mean, we've always talked about how I've always had this really kind of love-hate relationship with Larry David in general, because of how his shit is just a little too close to home. So like, yeah, it's George Costanza syndrome, right? Like, yeah, like it's.
But it was one of those where I'm like, I finally got it, and then he gave it to Bruce Lee. I'm like, this is weird. This is hitting closer to home than I was expecting in this episode. But this is also kind of that way for me to bring up the fact that the last, in quotation marks, episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm is tonight, and I'm fairly certain they're just gonna ape the Seinfeld finale, because he's gonna be on trial for giving the water to Leon's aunt in Georgia while she was online to vote. And it really kind of seems like they're just going to parade out all of the people that he has offended over 12 years of 12 seasons, 25 years of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I mean, I am totally on board with your whole quotation marks, because God knows they'll never fucking end the show if they can help it. But imagine if what it is he dies from COVID.
Well, he's already over it. He did get over it in the 9th episode.
So we know that.
I know that doesn't mean everything, but yeah.
Literally, what if he's on trial this whole time, and then like he's about to be put in prison, and then all of a sudden he just kicks it?
I don't know. I mean, he died at the end of the 5th season, so who knows what could happen? I don't know. I just know that the whole season has kind of been like, yeah, you weren't there for those 2 seasons, but you came back for the finale, right? That whole trial thing was your idea. There's been a lot of allusions to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I'm excited to watch the final episode. Again, it's not going to happen, but I'll have that to report on next week. But I did, watching him and the whole way that COVID affected his life, it made me think more of you and be like, well, it's okay that we couldn't record. I'm glad we had the Weezer 30th anniversary episode ready to go so that we could time capsule it so you could get healthy again. But then, let's watch a little bit of Curb Your Enthusiasm to forget about my troubles, and then there's all my troubles in semi-improv.
I do think that we actually, I think we landed right in the zeitgeist by putting the Weezer episode out anyway, so I'm actually pretty happy about that.
Oh yeah, I'm very happy like that. A lot of great feedback from people who have listened to the episode, so thank you for that. Thank you for listening. But I guess this is where I try to milk 30 minutes out of what I'm doing as penance for us releasing that episode prior to May 10th, 2024.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes on that episode. Like, I'm trying to make this not sound like hipstery nonsense, but like we kind of always we've talked in the past, I think, on the show about how we kind of decide how we're going to do some topics for some of the weirder episodes, right?
Yes.
And a lot of that is very time based, right? Like we like to do chronological like anniversaries and things like that. Like we like to talk about how like, oh, this thing is 20 years old, 25 years old, 30 years old. So like it was a thing on a list, right? Like the Blue Album was like a thing on a short list, but a list of things that we were kind of trying to decide what to do episodes about. And we hadn't done a music album in a while, so like we landed on just like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's do this Weezer Blue Album. But even in that conversation, we were like, but like we're so kind of distanced from this topic that like let's kind of just make it our across the board Weezer episode, because I don't think we'll ever talk about this again.
Yeah, unless
like,
they release another album that
we were kind of
catches.
just like,
it's right.
Yeah.
And you've listened to the episode at this point, and it really did become kind of our connection with Weezer as per the 30th anniversary of their first studio album.
What I don't think either of us planned on is how the rest of the world was also kind of having that same conversation. We just didn't, nobody had been talking to each other yet. So we recorded that episode. We had it. We were sitting on it, just waiting for when it would need to be needed by us, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like the rest of the world just started talking about their like Weezer thoughts and feelings. And we're just sitting here with this like pre-recorded episode that we've already had sitting there on the shelf, and we're just like, well, this will be really interesting when this finally comes out, huh? And then I'll be honest, it did kind of get to a point for me where I was just like, it feels almost like if we release this any later, we're gonna feel bandwagony, which is not like really a problem for me. Like I don't really care about those kinds of. Anybody out there that thinks that all we do is jump on bandwagons clearly
has never listened to the show.
And
right?
I think later today that we're gonna have a very a specific conversation about a big thing right now that Devin is very much not on the bandwagon for. So like I trust listeners to understand that that's not really what's going on. But anybody that comes along and sees like, oh yeah, just another Weezer episode, and I was like, I don't want that to be a thing, do I? I don't care. Maybe I do. And then the universe came along and answered that question for me.
Yeah, right? So thank you, universe. On the topic of us being bandwagony, Surf Ninjas is something that we're like, well, we got to do Surf Ninjas. And now the number of Surf Ninjas posts that I see on a daily basis after it being like nothing in my life has been a kind of scary. It has to be just Bader Meinhof.
We've always been talking about surfing. Yeah. We've all just been talking about it around you. You just never really.
I just never really perked up until I watched Tone Loc be a toboggan again. Good times, great oldies. But the hope for us, whenever I do a time capsule episode, and that one was recorded, as we said on the episode, on Leap Day. It was 2/29/2024 that we recorded that episode. And my hope was that we wouldn't need to use it before the actual 30th anniversary, which is May 10th, 2024. But then something magical, wonderful happened. We released that episode to you, the listening public, 40 days before the anniversary of the Blue Album, the 30th anniversary of the Blue Album. And 40 days, that's something that was kind of significant, up until the Friday before we released the episode, the Good Friday beforehand, the Friday leading into Easter Sunday for 2024. So with that 40 days that we have between us releasing the episode and the actual anniversary, I have proposed to Sejin, and I believe he's accepted, unless I've misread it, that we try to follow a sort of Weezer Lent, which is to avoid Weezer for these next 40 days. Too fast, if you will. To
your question of whether I'm on board, like, first of all, yeah, I'm totally on board for this. I am. Let's do this thing. But my response, and why you probably were feeling a little squishy about where I was going with it, was simply just like, my first initial thought was, in the episode we talk about the fact that, like, I don't go out of my way to interact with Weezer on a regular basis, so, like, okay, like, this will be easy, I guess. But then there was that moment afterwards where I was like, oh, but incidental Weezer, that is a different conversation. Like, actively changing the radio station when a Weezer song comes on is different than me not participating, right? Like, not having that interaction.
Yeah, it's
so, like, that's a different conversation. And yeah, incidental Weezer happens a lot in our lives. I don't think we really kind of clocked that until we started talking about this.
Yeah, so I have, in the wake of Sejin getting COVID again, I decided maybe I'm going to try to go out and do more things, right? Like, try to interact with the world again. And all of this is inspired by the Saturday, March 30th, last Saturday, which I would have talked about last episode. I really wanted to try this brewery in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where everything adds up, Massachusetts, called Second Wind Brewery, not a sponsor, have an Ecto Cooler Power Sour as like a beer, probably because of Frozen Empire.
Okay. Yeah.
And I kept seeing it, and I'm like, I really want to try it. Now, one of the reasons I want to try it is because I'm a big proponent of Ecto Cooler. I honestly don't understand how Ghostbusters has pretty much been a part of the zeitgeist since the film released in 1984, and yet for some reason High C doesn't have Ecto Cooler all the time. Like, I just don't understand it.
More specifically, 2 huge releases within the last 5 years and no hide nor hair of it. Not even like a tweet about it or anything, as far as I know.
Right. Where with Answer the Call, I remember one Friday night we had found out that a movie theater in Manchester, Connecticut was carrying the Ecto Cooler, and we drove down there and we bought a bunch of cans of it. And then later, I think Amazon, for that same movie, still for Answer the Call, the 2016 film, had a re-release of Ecto Cooler where you could order it from the shop and it'd come to you in like a 24-pack of cans. So it came back in 2016, but notably for Afterlife and for Frozen Empire, they did not bring it back. And High C is still out there. It's not like High C has gone away. It's still a product of the Coca-Cola company. It's still available. So I really wanted to get my Ecto Cooler on. I remember, I think 2 years ago, some like juice bar in the Midwest was like, we finally perfected Ecto Cooler using ingredients at home, and they had it in one of those like crazy juice dispensers. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about when I say that, CJ.
I was with you all the way up until crazy juice dispenser. That's about the point where
so you know like the lemonade machines at, say, Auntie Anne's, to just pick one at random, how like it's constantly filtering the lemonade. So like it doesn't
because
sit
because
still.
they use real lemons. They want to make sure that you don't get a bunch of silty crap in your lemonade.
Right, exactly.
When you get it. Yeah.
So it's one of those, but like now they use them for any sort of mixed juice to make sure that it's constantly perfectly mixed and like the right level of saturation of the juice flavor to the water part of it. Like this is
also they have the machine, and so they're not going to buy another juice machine just because this juice doesn't need it.
Right, but it makes the juice look like an experience instead of just a beverage.
Oh, 100%. There is they get to do the 50 cent like experience tax on it, right? Like they get to charge a little bit more. They get to act like it's something special just because they put it in a giant machine.
Right. So
while some kids just popping Capri Suns and squirting them in every half an hour.
Shh, they open them from the bottom. So that whole thing. So I saw it and I'm like, do I want to go to this juice bar in the Midwest? And I'm like, no, not really. COVID in 2022 was still more of an issue. So I'm like, that seems like a stupid reason to do it. But Plymouth, Massachusetts, hour and a half away from where I live, I'm willing to go there to try it. So we decide, since we're going to have to go into this brewery to get this beer, let's make a day of it. And that's exciting, right? Let's make a whole day of it. So we got breakfast at this little coffee shop named Burgundian in Attleboro. They do waffles. CJ, next time you're around here, we should go to Burgundian for breakfast. That's what I need to say. Man. I had buffalo chicken and waffles. That was like a savory waffle, and it was a hot honey buffalo. Oh my God, it was so good. And then the coffee was really good. I had a nitro cold brew. Like, it was this excellent experience. And then from there, we head down to Plymouth, and it's a brewery, so it doesn't open until noon. So we have a little bit of time to kill, so we go and see Plymouth Rock. We found a Pokeball Easter egg, which turns out that this game shop in the area, Bowser's Basement, they had done a Pokemon egg hunt with it, and if you found the Pokeball, you won a shaved ice and whatever Pokemon was inside of the ball if you returned it to them.
That's the most New England thing. You win a shaved ice.
Well, it's not like a crazy, like they have a new shaved ice station with like 30 different flavors and everything. They don't have the crazy juice machine. That makes me sad. But it's like a really nice shaved ice that you got for it. We went
to Coney Island, got ourselves a corn dog, and went on the monorail.
I don't know if they have a monorail like Coney Island. I would have gone with the Wonder Wheel, but that's me. I like Ferris wheels. I really like that scene in The Notebook where Ryan Gosling's like, I'm going to kill myself if you don't go on a date with me, despite being on a date with another guy right now. That hits me where I live. It doesn't. Please do not call. This is all in good humor. But then we go to the brewery, and I don't want to just start with the Ecto Cooler. So I get their porter, their nitro porter. Delicious. It's called Brilliant, which I appreciated. And then I got it. And it's only served in cans. So, they crack it, they pour it. And I got to tell you, Sejan, it tasted just like Ecto Cooler. To the point where when someone's like, what does it taste like? And the bartender's like, kind of tastes like a sweet tart. I'm like, you're not wrong. It is a little sweet. It is a little tart. But if you said it tasted like Ecto Cooler, you would also not be incorrect. Because this is the closest to Ecto Cooler I have tasted since 2016 when I got High C delivered to my house.
I gotta say, man, though, like it's one of those things where it's slowly becoming one of those things that like our generation is aware of, but there's a lot of people out there that just aren't going to have that reference point.
It was someone in our generation, so that's the other thing. It's like if it were a younger person, I'd get it, but I think the bartender was probably from a younger generation, hence it kind of tastes like sweet tarts. And I'm not judging, but it was just like, you could safely say that this tastes like Ecto Cooler, and anybody who's ever had it would be right there with you. And that's just someone who's a connoisseur of Ecto Cooler. Not to toot my own horn there, but I mean, I know when
Man, I've got vivid memories of coming around the bend at IGA in fucking Pawtucket, Rhode Island. That's where my parents used to do all of their shopping before IGA got bought up by Aldi's, and they got closed up and all that. But I remember, like, there was the produce section when you first walked in. Like every grocery store, you always kind of walk into the produce section first, and then you would go through the produce section and then come around the wall, and it was the wall of Kool-Aid, High C, like all of that stuff. What were the little juice bottles with the faces on them and stuff like that? Like
either Jumbo Juice or Mondo Juice, or
the little juice jugs and things like that. Like that, they had a whole wall of that. And I remember Ecto Cooler was always the one I went for because it had Slimer on it. Even when they changed the name to, I think, Tangerine Dream or something like that, and it was a cow instead of Slimer, we all still knew. So trying that beer, the other thing that's really cool about it is a sour, so it's not high ABV. It's like a 5.4, but it also has electrolytes in it, which seems crazy for a beer. I've never done it before. Maybe it's very, all the time, let's be putting electrolytes into this beer. So instead of getting dehydrated, you're kind of staying, with it, and you're maybe not going to have a hangover tomorrow. I don't know, but you could taste them. I mean, the thing is, like, we don't need to go on this tangent, but like, at the end of the day, electrolyte just means salt.
Yes.
But anyway.
I don't know. All I know is you can taste it. It does sort of drink like a sports drink as opposed to a beer. I mean, I'm a big fan of sours.
That's the
anyway.
danger.
So
that is the danger with that shit, though, man. There's a company out here right now, Fisher's Brewery, for anybody from the Utah area. But they've got a lemonade sour that they do every year, and this year it's like a pomegranate raspberry or something like that. And yeah, it's like soda. It's not actually beer. It's one of those things where the second you drink it, you're just like, in the wrong hands, this would be very dangerous.
And guess what? These are the wrong hands. No. So that was fun. And then from there, we went to a little pub on the road, had a couple of beers as well with some fries. And, we had steak and cheese egg rolls, which are kind of my favorite new appetizer of 2024. I don't know if you've gotten to have the steak and cheese egg roll yet, Sejin, but hunt it out. I'm sure somewhere around.
It sounds like something that a Fridays would have on its menu. But
it came with a zesty ranch dipping sauce. It was delicious. Then we went over to Bowser's Basement, got our free shaved ice, and then we went on our way home, and we were still kind of hungry. So we passed a Friendly's, and the last Friendly's in Boston, like Boston proper, just closed. So to see an open Friendly's in Plymouth, we're like, well, we're going to Friendly. I got me a Fribble. God, I love a Fribble.
Man, Friendly's is a fucking wild ass story. It is like McCaffrey levels of insanity what the owner of that company did with their money. Yes, it is. It is nuts that it's like this stupid little ice cream company in like the tri-state area by you guys, like, and like it's got this weird ass backstory of this guy like embezzling funds for ice cream.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing is that a Fribble is just an awful at like Newport Creamery, but the original awful is from New Jersey, and both places bought the recipe to make it, but then to not compete with each other, Friendly's called it a Fribble, and Newport Creamery got the actual awful name. Like, that's just crazy to me, with its ice milk base. And then I had a black raspberry Fribble. Sejin, I would slap you in the face until you knocked out for another black raspberry Fribble right now. It was so good.
Nice.
And then we came home and we watched some things that, well, we'll talk about some of the things that I watched last week as well. But it was just nice to go out into the world again. There's a reason why I got to, Incidental Weezer is how we got there. So, like, because I had went out on Saturday, when a friend was like, you want to get together on Tuesday, I suggested, yes, let's go to Hooters. And it's not for, like, gross reasons. It's because it's 2 for Tuesdays. So you buy 10 wings, you get 10 wings for free. So if someone wants to go out on a Tuesday, that's probably going to be what I recommend. I just want everyone to know that blanket statement. On Tuesdays, I'd like to go to Hooters because I buy 10 wings, I get 10 wings for free. And that's the perfect amount of wings.
There's a couple of them out in the Ohio area, if I remember correctly, up by like the Toledo airport. There's a couple of them that I think are probably all owned by the same person, which is why they're all kind of on this board, where they don't even really do the whole like Hooters girl thing anymore. Like they still wear like outfits because it's uniforms because it's work, but like they wear like hoodies and shit. Like the when you first say Hooters, like the image that pops into your head, they just like actively just don't do that. They're just like a family restaurant out there. It's like I had never went in. I have never been in a Hooters. I will make that
Wow,
claim
that is
right
an
now.
impressive thing.
For no real moral reason or anything. It's just honestly, I don't think the opportunity has ever come up. I don't think anybody's ever looked at me and been like, "Let's go to Hooters." But I do remember that a few of the undergrads that were hanging out with us in Ohio, one or two of them had gotten waitressing jobs, and when it had gotten around where they had gotten waitressing jobs, of course it becomes a topic of discussion because that's how these things go. But in that, learning that they were working at quote unquote the not dirty ones, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, my big Hooters memory before, I've been to the Hooters now in Warwick, Rhode Island twice, and it's very different because that had closed down due to and then it reopened in like the middle of the pandemic. So the fact that it's still there makes me very happy. Prior to that, my big Hooters experiences were the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving in order to not be in town, because every bar in Coventry, and I imagine this is in any small town, but specifically in Coventry, if you went to a bar in Coventry the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, it was just a high school reunion. More so than it is almost every night. Like, you'd actually have some people who are like in from out of town hitting their old watering hole. And
I think like the bigger issue with like places like that, because the other thing is that they all kind of purport themselves, like so there's Hooters, more out this way is Twin Peaks, right? And then I think in the Midwest you get Tilted Kilt is one of the ones that's really big in the more Midwesty area. But they're all the same basic idea. They're going to staff the place with a bunch of pretty looking people. I think in some of these places it is men and women. At certain places it's just women, but like it's like baked into the business model that like they're not hiring wait staff, they're hiring actresses,
they're hiring performers, they're hired as performers,
right? So it gives them this kind of like legal like leeway to be like, you gain 5 pounds, you're fired, which sucks, right? Like that's fucking awful, right? So like that's the bigger thing about these places, is no matter how quote unquote safe, I guess would be the word.
Oh yeah, no, it's
like no matter how safe these places seem like they have become, it is important to remember that like they are all kind of built on a really shitty foundation.
Oh yeah, no, like bro, you go to the original Hooters in Dayton Beach, Florida, or at least that's like one of their flagship stores now. I don't know if this is the original one, and I only say that because they have Dayton Beach wings on the menu, and I think that's the whole reason they're called that. But yeah, so when you say Twin Peaks, right, my immediate thought is that all the waitstaff is wrapped in plastic. That is not the case.
Dude, the only thing I know about Twin Peaks is they keep having motorcycle gang shootouts at all of them. So like that's like the biggest thing I know.
So I will not be going there. But yeah, so what we used to do on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we'd go to the one in Worcester. There was a Hooters in Worcester that was only about an hour drive, and it felt pretty good because you get to see that whole high school reunion BS of like everybody knows everybody here, but you're removed from it. You're not running into somebody you don't want to see. You're not put into an awkward situation. So it was kind of fun. Plus, for the day before Thanksgiving, Hooters does like wings giving, and you can get like 50 wings for the price of 15. Because the thought is like, you could bring some to the dinner tomorrow.
Yeah, take it to go, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. So that was fun. But then prior to that, my experience before that Hooters in Worcester was in Manchester, Connecticut again. God damn, Manchester, Connecticut, just like the BJ of this episode. I almost said your name again, you stupid ghost. I'm edging him, Siege, and I'm loving it. In Manchester, Connecticut, there was a really good Toys R Us. And when Toys R Us were closing, we decided that we would take the trip to go visit that really good Toys R Us. And then across the street from that Toys R Us, explicably there was a Hooters. I don't know if that's a special marketing idea, but there always seems to be a Hooters and a Toys R Us, or at least there always seemed to be a Hooters and a Toys R Us in close vicinity together.
Drop off the kids and then come get a beer.
Yeah, that's it. And we went to that Toys R Us right as they were closing to like see if we could see anything. One last hurrah in the store. One last time to enjoy that trip. And then we're like, since we don't have a Hooters near home and it seems like that restaurant is also kind of on its way out, why don't we follow up Toys R Us with this visit to the Hooters? So it is like lunchtime on a Friday. It was a Thursday or a Friday. It was one of these things where like I took the day off of work and we're like, because it'll be easier that way. It won't be as mobbed as say like a Saturday. Let's do it that way. And that lunch rush at that Hooters in Manchester, Connecticut is the most uncomfortable I have ever felt for like the wait staff and the servers at a restaurant. Like old dudes alone who are there just to ogle these women. And
almost like they were built on a foundation of lies.
Right, but it's like it really
and sin.
It gave me Tuesday afternoon strip club vibes. Yeah. The Friday lunch rush at Hooters.
No, it's a fucking wild thing that this is it's one of those things where like nowadays, because those kinds of places are so on the outs that it's kind of sometimes hard to explain to somebody that wasn't there, that doesn't really grasp like why we are so kind of like adamant that like, no, we need to stay ever vigilant, because if given the opportunity, men will just open restaurants where they can ogle 17-year-old girls again. Like that's like, you don't understand. This was a part of the culture that was so a part of the culture that it was celebrated in the 90s and even in the 2000s. And it's really, really only been like the last like 10, 15 years that we've really had this like huge moment of like, maybe we need to not behave this way. And like, now we have younger generations of people that are growing up that are kind of just like, man, you guys like to talk about this kind of shit a lot, and I just don't see it anywhere. And it's just like, well, you don't understand. It was fucking rampant in the past. Like these kinds of attitudes were just like rampant in the past.
Yeah. I mean, Hooters, looking at it, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and then converted it to Chapter 7 in 2012. Like, the fact that Hooters has survived that and been able to thrive is insane to me.
Well, that might explain why in 2012 there were these like these Hooters around, like me at least at the time, that were like trying to not be Hooters anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like it was one of those things where you're just like, at some point, why are you holding on to this franchise name if this is the attitude you have about it, right? Like what is the thought process behind like trying to get in a certain audience of people that are expecting a certain thing that you're not delivering on and don't want to be delivering on? Like what are you doing? What are you gaining by still calling yourself Hooters?
Right. To that argument, what I was going to talk about when I was working in the Caribbean with Carnival, St. Thomas, which is the U.S. Virgin Islands. So it is, they try to present as American. There's a Kmart. There's a Wendy's. The menus are very crazy. Like they call it
one of those
bacon.
Great places that we like to collect a bunch of money from, but we don't let them have any representation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Right? I bought Dead Rising 2 at the Kmart there for $80.
I was going to say how much money.
Yeah,
80
right?
$80 makes sense. Yeah,
$80 makes a little bit of sense. And the Wendy's, the Baconator was just the Big Bacon Classic, but they just called it a Baconator, but they didn't have Baconators. It was weird. But they had a Hooters there as well. And the thought process there is that in addition to being the U.S. Virgin Islands, it is also like a tourist destination, right? Like it's a Caribbean sort of resort island. And they have that Hooters. And I go there and I'm like, man, this is not a Hooters. First of all, we're sitting outside and like the people who are walking by are just as attractive as the wait staff, right? Because it's young people on holiday. But they did the wings really good. I have to give them that credit. But it was one of those things where it's like, no, I'm going to go to like a not a knockoff kind of chain bar when I come here. And I did. I found a little pizza place. And I also found a burger place. I can't remember the name of that burger place. But they did 3 quarter-pound patties that were huge. And I'd go there, I'd watch Around the Horn and Pardon the Interruption while eating a giant hamburger.
Nice.
And just, good times. But yeah, like, it's one of those situations where, like, but I think that familiarity of the name of Hooters allowed people to, like, it's those people who, like, travel internationally and then still eat at McDonald's. Because it's like a taste of home. And it's weird to think of that as a Hooters, but that was one of those situations. And I think that was it. Like, I go there for the chicken wings. I have never gone to Hooters to be like, oh, sexy ladies. I'm like, no, they do a pretty good chicken wing. They do an affordable chicken wing. And I really like the plastic orange glasses. I just have to be honest about that. They're like the old...
There is something about the idea of, like, a sports bar, right? That is, like, for me at least, like it is definitely what I would consider, like, a safe bet, right? Like, if I'm in a new city and I'm not sure what to do and I just need to get something in me. I mean, this gets to what you were talking about with, like, people traveling internationally and then, like, suddenly they just go to McDonald's. It's like at some point something hits you and you're just like, look, I need to get something in my system, and I don't want to think about it. I don't want to worry about it. I don't want to consider, like, oh, is this going to be for like, there is a time and a place in my day for me to experience a thing. I just need to get calories in my body, right? And when that moment hits, like a sports bar is definitely always a safe bet for me. Like, I don't know what's going to be on the TV, but it'll at least be watchable. I know that they'll at least have a certain number of beers on tap, and I know that they'll have, like, a buffalo chicken wrap or a cheeseburger that I can order, and I'll be good to go, right? And the beauty of that is that it's just enough leeway that I can still find a quote unquote local place, but still, like, kind of still have that safety net feeling, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so I get it. Like, yeah, like, and like Hooters being kind of that in aesthetic outside of, right, their whole other aesthetic, right, is like something that makes sense. It's just, again, there's a point at which the well is poisoned when you're talking about that franchise in a large way, and it's very interesting to me the ways in which they still exist, right? And, like, the idea that there are still Hooters in this world in 2024, in this country in 2024, is kind of astounding, like in an awful way. like I am so surprised and I am kind of horrified.
Yeah, I don't know. While we're on the topic of the sports bar, what do you consider a dive bar? I'd like to have this discussion of the definition of a dive bar.
Generally, lack of windows or windows are covered is a key, but that's not an immediate thing, because there's plenty of bars that are like that aren't dive bars.
Yeah.
Cleaning is not top priority. Often there are things like jukeboxes and pinball machines and things like that, and it's a 50-50 shoot whether or not they're, in working order. And generally, you get up to the bar and there's like 3 beers. Like, they're not attached to some fancy brewery that brings them local stuff. They don't have, like, rotation of seasonal beers. Like, they've got a lager, they've got an ale, and they've got maybe a stout, but even that's kind of pushing it for some of these places. And then add to that just kind of the general attitude. Like, if people are happy to sit at a table and loudly be upsettingly, vulgar and perhaps even racist, is usually a pretty good sign that you're in a dive bar. If people are sitting at places and at tables or at the bar and generally trying to keep to themselves, there's a little bit of a nicer appeal to that to me. The less of that there is, the more kind of down the scale you get in the bar for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's I sort of feel that way. When I think of dive bars and bars that I've been to, the place on Empire Street next to AS 220, it's a little Irish drinking establishment where I used to take people for their 21st birthday. As someone once said, Devin is the perfect person to take you out on your 21st birthday because you will have a fun time, but also probably never want to drink again. And that's, I think that's nice. That, like, I would spare people alcoholism in some way, shape, or form. Because I went hard. We went to that little dive bar once for one of the people, for JB's, right? I'll cover his identity, right? I think we've talked about him before on the show, but still, for his 21st birthday. And I'm like, this is the diviest of dive bars, but mostly it was because he wanted to go to Trinity Brew House. So we were like trying to kill time until we could get in there. So we're
Right.
like, we can have your first drink here or a couple. But when they found out it was his birthday, this usually like closed off kind of clientele. They all like woke up and were happy and were shoving drinks down his throat and offering to buy him stuff.
That's kind of the secret of those kinds of places,
Yeah.
though, right? Is that there is a camaraderie that forms by everyone being in there. And the problem is, it is a double-edged sword, right? Like, as like a 35-year-old white dude, it's easy for me to fall into that feeling in those kinds of places. There are people that are not like me, where that kind of camaraderie of the people in the bar already can work against their feeling of safety, legitimately.
Yeah,
like,
no,
and
I
I'm not
agree,
even trying to say like those feelings are not. Those are legitimate concerns that people that don't feel like they fit into those places, when they see that kind of attitude, it can rightly scare the shit out of them, right? And so like there is also something about that. Like you walk into a Fridays and you don't really feel connected to everybody sitting there, but there is something about how kind of in that it's what kind of leads to that attitude I was talking about people not having any like fear or shame about just loudly having their conversation about their third divorce that they're getting because of the warts on their dick. Like you're just like, what the fuck are you doing, bud? Like, why are you, I literally just walked in here and the only thing on the menu is fucking Bud Light. Like let's all just take a moment for me to at least get a beer in me before I have to listen to you talk about this shit. But it's what leads to that is that feeling of camaraderie that people have in those kinds of places. I mean, it's the true definition of the old school like public houses, like that idea that people would meet in these places and you could feel like you were in a safe space because everybody there was on the same page. Everybody there was just there to have a drink and get some food in them. So it made it a safe place off the road to hide away for a bit from the rain,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like a dive bar, specifically because they used to be underground. They were basement establishments. That's where part of it is you dive into them. A small, unglamorous, eclectic, old-style drinking establishment, according to Wikipedia. But then on the Wikipedia page for Dive Bar, author Todd Dayton offering the following: dives are like pornography, hard to define, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah, there's a pizza place out here that's right up by the University of Utah that very much like rides this aesthetic to the point where it starts to kind of become like maybe doesn't really count as one because of how much it's leaning into it, right? Like it's trying a little too hard. But in general, like I would call it like it's this basement underneath a pharmacy. You go in, you order your pizza and usually a pitcher of PBR, right? And then like you find whatever table you can get in. There's tables all the way up to like the bathroom door. Like, and the place is always just fucking full because it's right there on by the university with all the frat houses and all that stuff. And it is probably the most quintessential dive I have been in Utah. Right? There's maybe one or two other places that were a little too Trumpy for me to ever go back to, but other than that, like it is the place that I go to time and time again that I would say is probably a dive.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really thought about it, but after I did the Hooters thing, there's a little bar that I used to consider it my bar, right? It's right at the end of the street where I live. I used to go there when I was in high school because they did 15-cent chicken wings, and that's where I learned and honed all of my chicken wing eating abilities, all of my chicken wing rituals, and I was thinking about my chicken wing rituals as I'm with people that I've never eaten chicken wings before at this Hooters, and I build my little chicken wing tower. And I go my fat, flat way of eating my chicken wings.
How do you tackle the flats?
What?
How do you tackle the flats?
Well, I've recently learned the like professional eating way to do a flat, where you put
like
it
squish
in
all the meat down to one side
you
and then
umbrella
eat it like a lollipop.
Yeah. And I really like doing that. But before I would just try to eat them like the way that I do the fats and go through and make sure to poke the meat through like the center hole of them.
Yeah, but you got to be real intimate with the person you're eating with, like across the table with at that point. The way whatever your tongue is doing to get that middle meat out.
Exactly, which is why I really like the pro way of like you put it in there and then you kind of umbrella it to one side. That really works for me. I really enjoy that, and I've been going kind of nuts on chicken wings lately. I just, football season gets it all up into me. And then we found a really place called like Bang Bang Wings. They have a location in like Attleboro and in Johnston, and they do all sorts of sauces and they have really good deals on them. And the wings are just like, They are some of the best chicken wings that I have ever eaten. I consider myself a bit of a connoisseur of the chicken wing, as I've said. But then going to Hooters, like the Daytona Beach wings are really, really good. So I did it, right? But then like I'm living in this nostalgia of when on Sundays I would go to, at the time it was called Mark's Bar, and for 15 cents I could get a chicken wing, and I'd buy like 50 wings. And it would not be crazy, and I'd eat 50 wings. Usually 45. I'd do 15 of each flavor because they did 3 flavors. I'd do buffalo, teriyaki, and plain, and then I'd rotate through those, going fat to flat, until I built these beautiful bone towers that kind of looked like Jenga.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you've never seen it, like, let me know. Reach out. I will go and I will show you my chicken wing rituals. But after going to Hooters, I'm like, I'm still kind of amped up. I'm still out. I'm dirty because I know that when I get home, I'm going to take a shower because I've been out, and like, I'm still kind of like ready to do stuff. So I went to this local bar, and since it was Mark's, it's since been like 4 other names, and now it's The Woods. And it's kind of the diviest that I would ever consider like any of the bars I've gone to, like in the vicinity of my home. But also like, it's got big windows and natural light comes in all the time. And as I was sitting there looking at the Woods aesthetic, I'm like, only the walls that are facing out. So none of the other walls of this place, they've put up like, it makes it look like it's kind of a log cabin or it's wood slats that make up the place. And it's like, this place was fine before like the gimmick of we're the woods. And I still had fun drinking there. Acoustic karaoke was going on, which was an interesting thing to do. I got my nerve up. I sang Brian Wilson. That was fun. Like, it was fun to be there. But like, thinking about, this is the bar that when I was working on the cruise ship, I like called them one Friday because nobody believed that it was my bar. And it was one of those things. So like Friday night, I call with a bunch of people, and it's like 11 p.m. And they pick them. They're all like, Devin, like the norm sort of greeting into the phone because they knew my number. It was a weird experience. This is the bar. This is the story I always tell of this particular bar. And this is like 2 names ago. So I don't think I could do it now. But I was going there hoping to just get a drink before last call. I was a passenger. I was not driving. And the driver was speeding and they got pulled over. And before the cop came over, I called them and I go, hey, we got pulled over right before the turn to your bar. Can I put in an order for last call? Because I don't want to miss it. And they're like, yeah, of course, Devin. And that was like kind of the craziest thing I've ever done in terms of drinking and like establishments, was calling in my order because I got pulled over and knew I might not make it there before last call.
Man.
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry. And then I'm thinking like, was this a dive bar? Cause like the song Dive Bar came on, like my Discover Weekly. And I'm just like, I've been thinking about this. And I was curious what your definition was. That pizza place that you're talking about? Yeah, that sounds like it. Yeah. I like that pizza places are like generally pizza places plus dive bar, if that makes sense, at least in my experience. Because they're
good ones.
Yeah, the good ones. I mean, like I went to the old theater diner. I used to go there Friday nights to get a pizza and a couple of pitchers of PBR because the pitchers of PBR were like $3.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but then they built out like a whole entertainment room that is a bar, and then they got like pool, and they have tables to play cards and a bunch of arcade games, and like that feels distinctly non-dive bar now.
No, you're putting some effort behind to maintain the facilities. You're definitely not a dive bar.
Yeah. I don't know. I did not realize until this last week where I wound up in 5 different bars how much I missed going out for a drink to the bar. Like, it's a social thing.
No,
there's a social aspect to it that I miss.
Exactly. There's the social aspect to it. There's the romanticism of like that idea of, again, it just feels like it should be a safe space and things like that. And that's just something that, you and I especially, like, that's just kind of a culture that we grew up in. And like, so yeah, it's been weird these last few years, kind of readjusting to what the new norm is, right? And part of that is that I just don't go to that many bars anymore. You know, it's not that we don't go out, but like we don't make it a point to like just go out and grab a drink. You know, it's always like food and or something, you know?
Yeah. And I get that. And a lot of them, with the pandemic, they took the time to clean themselves up. There's like a whole phenomenon of dive bars becoming legitimate restaurants. I think of going from Moe's Tavern to Uncle Moe's Family Feed Bag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, so there's a weird sort of precedent for it. Even like you said, the Hooters in Ohio that were probably all franchises owned by the same guy or like group of people being like, oh, they're going down. Like, we need to still make ourselves a viable restaurant. Why don't we lean into the things that are like good about this as a restaurant, that the distinctly non-Hooters part of owning a Hooters?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just been it's been on my mind because I haven't been to a bar in so long, and it used to be like not to a point where like I had a problem, but it would be like social, right? Like I'd go out on Friday night and have a couple of drinks, and that would feel good. It'd usually be how like my night ended, right? Like I was coming from some sort of event, and then it's like, let's go here. We can sit, we can calm down, we can talk to the other people about what they did with their Friday nights after the band had left, right? There's nothing worse than going to a bar with a band. As a person who ran sound for a lot of bands at bars, I hate that. I hate live music at my bar. And I guess that might be why I gravitate to the dive bars, because there tends to not be enough room for it.
Definitely not enough money.
Yeah, right? Like, we can pay you in half full bottles of Heineken. Why are they half full? Do you want the gig or not? All right. Sorry, I got all spirally about that. I've been good. I've been feeling really good. I've been getting a lot of wins, and I've enjoyed that. Like it's weird to say that I feel like my old self again, but in a lot of ways I do. And it's kind of been nice. Though kind of also not been nice. Cuz if you look at the Say Report, we now have a public-facing Discord. Please join us. You can find links to invites to join on any of our social media pages. So come join the conversation, because we're Say Reporting all week, not just during the episodes. I shared something in there called 377 Spoilers. It's a picture of the new NECA stuff that they got over at the Target. And the important part about this, first of all, this is nowhere near what Target is doing. Target, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the animated series alone, it is easily $600 worth of product. And that is discounting like the Mirage inspired figures that are going to be part of this Target haulathon. Because they have ultimate versions of the Turtles that are like the old Burger King Pizza Club. Do you remember the Pizza Club VHSs, Sejan?
Oh man, wow, that's a friggin' like blast from the past.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. All right.
So they have that for one of those for each of the Turtles. That is the basic Turtle that came in a 4-pack that released like 3 years ago, but then with a bunch of other accessories that is like targeted to specific things that each of the brothers did in episodes of the TV series. And each of those is $37 before tax. So if you buy all 4 of those, doing quick math in my head, that's almost $150. They also have a 154-pack of the Turtles in their punk disguises from when they went to Britain or the UK, right. And they just wore leather jackets and crazy hairstyles. And so that's another $150 right there. So that's like almost $300. Then they have 2 packs. Casey Jones in his business suit, Samurai Michelangelo and Donatello. The other one with the Casey Jones in his business suit is a foot soldier that has been cut down the middle. So like it's hard to look at that as a toy because like it's not much like it can do much. It's kind of just a prop to go with business suit Casey Jones. Each of those are like $52, so that's another $100 right there.
But these are all associated with the FHE like Kids Club.
No, just the ultimate figures. Those ones. Called Leonardo Leads, Donatello Does Machines, Cool But Rude Raphael, and Party Dude Michelangelo. Those are the titles. That's one set of them, and that's $150. They look like the FHE. In fact, it says NECA the way that it said FHE on the side of those, and it's the bright colors. That's one part of it. But then other toy, like the TV show associated things, are those things that I just described to you. And then they also have an Usagi Yojimbo, who was in that same FHE looking like he's a VHS figure. So that's another $37 pre-tax. Like, it's a lot of money just in that. But then in addition to that, they have some Mirage stuff. And that's kind of what I shared this photo for. Because you see like the Foot Enforcer or just the Foot Soldier in the Mirage colors. And these figures should be like, oh my God, I want them. Because they were only ever released before in a San Diego Comic-Con 4-pack. That was like very difficult to get because it was an exclusive to San Diego Comic-Con. But don't fret if you're somebody who has these. These are painted with glossy paint instead of matte paint. Ninja Turtles collectors, I will say it every time, are some of the most insane people that I have ever interacted with. And I can say that because I'm technically one of them, right? But the stuff that, like, the way...
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so what it is, the reason I shared this picture is that lower one, that Foot Soldier that's there, with the maroon, like, doji on, and then the gray pants and the gray mask. He has become my greatest nemesis. Because all of these figures are set to release at Target on April 12th. But we live in a post supply chain fuck up society now. So if they have product and they have empty shelf space, they just put the stuff out. So like as early as like the 16th of March, people were finding this stuff at Targets. And I've been looking every time I go to Target to see if I can find any of these figures. I'm really just kind of looking for like cool but rude Raphael, because I don't have this style of turtle, right? I have a bunch of Mirage and all sorts of other stuff, and I would really like a Raphael. I'm a big fan of Raphael. And every time, all I find is that Foot Soldier that's in that picture. And that's almost worse because it means that it was all there, but he was the misfit toy of the group. So like you find the display and he's just kind of sitting there and is like, well, I'm going to take you home, Charlie in the box. And it's been an interesting thing with that. I imagine that once the actual haulathon starts, you can maybe get them online. Though online shopping is still a fucking monster because of everything with like bots and all of that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
This morning, as an example, at 4 a.m., they put up, are you familiar with Jada Toys and any of the stuff that they've been doing lately? They're a relatively new company on the market, but they've got some crazy licensing stuff. No. All right, so Jada, they had leapt onto the scene with Street Fighter figures, and they did a Ryu and a Fei Long from Street Fighter 2. And This year they're doing Dalsim and M. Bison. And their release date is July. On the Jada Toys website, if you were to go right now, it would say releasing July 2024. But they've been found at Targets. So this morning at 4 a.m., I follow all sorts of crazy things on Twitter, but one of them is this letting you know when stuff goes up on websites, right? Preturnia is the name of it. Again, not a sponsor or anything like that. Just what I use to see when stuff is available. 4 a.m., Dalsim M. Bison on the Target website available for pickup. And I go to look at it at 6 when I woke up this morning, already sold out. And then I look at the comments, like within 30 minutes of that post going up, already sold out. And that's got to be bots picking it up. Like, there's no way that,
Yeah.
Based on the time and everything like that. And I don't know. And then not yesterday, Friday, I was going through like reels on Instagram and stuff. And there was a reel like, follow us to learn how to make between $9 and $15 on the toys that everyone is looking for. Like, it's gotten to the point that there are like how-to videos on how to scalp toys that are in demand.
Well,
is
wasn't there like a big blow up a couple of months back because there was some big release, I think at Target, of a Pokemon collection that like some some toy flipper store like owner went and like bought like 60 like like a pallet's worth essentially like bought out the store of this like Pokemon like release and then like was parading it around online like as he was like purchasing it and like bringing it home like him and his wife I think if I remember correctly.
yeah,
It was like this huge story of the like being like, yep, we bought out all the Pokemon stuff at this local Target and everybody was just like, you're the problem.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the other thing is that, like, a lot of the time, I mean, as much as one of the things I got today, because I did go to Target before the recording today, is the World of Nintendo stuff. I got a Lemmy Koopa. I love Lemmy Koopa. First of all, because he's named after God, but also because he's like, he's just so interesting to me. His whole design and aesthetic, like the rainbow hair and the fact that he balances on the ball, though the ball was not included. And I saw him, and he was for $20 at Target. He was on clearance for $10, but I had seen him at that shop in Plymouth as well, and I'm like, maybe I'm gonna get it, but he was $30 there. So like, if I go to Target and get him, his MSRP is $20, but then like the collectible stores, which in a lot of ways is kind of the only way to get some of these collectibles now, is to go to a specialized store for it. We don't have Toys R Us anymore. Targets and Walmarts, they got bit hard a couple of years back with like having to clearance stuff out because all the stuff that people wanted got supply chain screwed up. So then by the time it showed up at them, nobody was buying that stuff. So then they're going for like $5 to $10 a figure that had an MSRP of $24 to $30 because it's just like we don't have space for it. It's crazy. It's been this crazy thing. So that the fact that collectors will go to those stores, buy them at that, and then jack up the price. I mean, at least you have a store, right? Like you have a place where you're going to be selling it. It's not fantastic that you're taking advantage of the lack of product at other places. And then like also like think of like, I don't know if you've seen like Ollie's or Ross Dress for Less have been carrying like overstock lots. Right, and then they sell them for like $5.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem is like there's a chain already in place for suppliers to already be buying this stuff. And I get it that like these smaller stores may not have this opportunity to like do that. It's just it's a really wild kind of balance, you know, like I'm looking here at the story now. It was on March 17th, the owners of Mad Rat's Toys in Houston, they posted all this stuff on Facebook about how they had 2 shopping carts full of the 2-pack Pokemon Zapdos X and Alakazam X new cards that were coming out, and they basically bought out this like Target, like just bought all of their shit, and we're like, you can come to our place to buy them. And then sure enough, people would like post that they were selling them at like $10 more than they could have gotten them at Target, right? And like, it's just this weird idea of just like, as a store, you should probably be buying from a supplier, right? Like not going into another store, buying up all of their shit and then saying, we're the only place in town you can get this. Like that feels gross, right? But the other side of that is kind of like this idea that like
market,
stores like
right?
Target and Walmart and things like that, because they get the first come first serve nature of like, we're going to buy up all this shit and then throw it on our shelves and then like it's not going to go anywhere, right? These little mom and pop shops around like have kind of been choking because they haven't been able to get their hands on supplies that people want. So like there is something to the idea that also just like they probably should have had the ability to buy these, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know the whole story behind it, but I have a sneaking suspicion they probably weren't going to be given a good opportunity to buy that many cards in the first place, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's a really
that weird.
I've seen collector like there's other crazy thing that's happened to this is that collectible stores now have a pretty big YouTube presence. I don't know if this is something we use YouTube very differently, you and I. So I don't know if you've noticed this as a rising thing, as like a way to promote themselves. They have YouTube channels. So then it's like, if you're in the Dallas Fort Worth area, come on down to my toy store, and you see all the stuff that they have, and you know, they become destinations because of their YouTube channels. And we've seen
Right.
this with game stores as well, right? It's not a new sort of thing, but it's a thing that exists in the world.
Yeah, it's part of the whole hustle culture, right?
Right.
It's like you gotta really kind of push your gig like on social media in order to like have that presence out there for people to decide to go to your store over the one, 2 blocks down.
Yeah. So one of the guys was talking about, he's like, just because I'm probably the third biggest toy store, like internet toy store, does not mean anything to the suppliers. Like, I don't get first come at Hasbro. I'm coming up on the list where, like, here's what's rest of the allocation. How much of it do you want? Like, Target and Walmart, they still get first grab at that. And then even being the third online person, right? There's still 2 other shops that he has to wait for them to be done before he can put his order in. And it's just like,
Yeah, it becomes this kind of thing where, I mean, it's a step away from like market manipulation, right? Where like the only reason that that you're the only place I can buy these toys or these cards or these games, and the only reason I have to pay this $30 markup fee is because you went out of your way to make sure the rest of the market was bare. Right? When you're the person responsible for creating that drought, like, I don't really want to give you my business. And I think that's a totally fair like response, right?
Of course, yeah. Like, how else would a person respond, right? How else?
Right,
like, I remember, right? I'm not going to talk about the store, but I'm up early, right? Like, if you've listened to the show, I am awake early, and like, I like to go out into the world early because it's like kind of quiet and almost surreal to be in these big box stores when like there's less than 50 people in there. Right? Like a Walmart that's usually filled to brim. That's why I like the midnight visit to Walmart so much, right?
Yeah.
But now that stores aren't open 24 hours, like, most people are not up on a Sunday to be at a store when they open at 9 a.m., right? Like, that's something that I did this morning. But one of the stores, they're connected to a mall. It's a Target that's connected to a mall, and there's a toy store in that same mall. I got there like right around when they opened, and I'm in the toy section, and the guy who owns that toy store is in the toy section as well, buying everything. And I'm like, he's not buying that for him, right? He's buying that to sell at his store. And when you see things like a Marvel Legends figure that is supposed to be $35 marked up to $60, it's just like, that sucks. Like, I'm not going to give you that money. Because I guess if I was a little bit faster than you, I could have gotten it at the MSRP, or maybe even less. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, like it's like a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, like, there should be protections in place for smaller stores to be able to get in. Like, certain amounts of supply should be put aside for smaller stores, right? Whether or not it's legal regulations or just common courtesy or what, but like, there should be some type of system in place to make sure that mom and pop stores, like brick and mortar, little tiny places, can get that option, so that there is a reason to be going to those places. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not an expert on this, but like, that's what I would like in place in the world. But the other side of that is, I also don't want those places to turn into the evil empire, where they turn around and do this kind of thing, where, like you're talking about, where they have this plan where every Sunday they're just going to go to the store and just buy out the toy section so that they can turn around and do a markup price on all their stuff, and then they become the only place you can go and get your shit. Like, no, that's not the solution, guys. And like, I understand that it's easier said than done in the ways that like business works and all that, but it's why I'm such a firm believer in the idea that there need to be certain regulations placed on the market. Like, a truly free market, this is what comes from a truly free market, right? And that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I also feel, and I'll talk about Newberry Comics, right? I'll put them on blast. Like, when they sell, they get the same sort of allocation, right? They're able to order from, say, Hasbro to get a box of figures.
They're able to get straight up Newberry Comic exclusive figures.
Yes, exactly. They can make those deals with it, right? And then when that figure shows up at Newberry Comics on what its street date would be, and it's $50, like, that is exploitive. That feels like, what are you doing? I understand that this character is short packed, right? Like, only one of them comes to a box, but like, you them being able to be like, well, the MSRP is this, but because you can get it here, even though they only have the one and we're going to jack up the price, that also feels gross, right? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. It all feels like anti-consumer. And also, the real reason why I'm talking about toys, and it's going to lead into that bandwagon thing that Sejan teased a little bit earlier, it kind of feels like the marketplace as a whole, to the millennial generation, is trying to keep us in a semi-perpetual childhood. This is a thing that I've been noticing lately, like the fact that everybody is losing their minds over these figures that I've talked about so far, but then also the crazy nostalgia on something like X-Men 97, which has been around now for 3 weeks. 4 episodes have aired, though weirdly the 4th episode, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was comprised of 2 11-minute stories, which I don't think that show ever did before. And it really struck me as odd to be like, here's 11-minute story 1, here's 11-minute story 2. It's not Phineas and Ferb. It's not Teen Titans. It's not a show on Cartoon Network where they like try to make 11-minute episodes. And also it's on streaming, right? So like I don't get why they're doing like I don't get it.
I do get the impression that it's like a lot of Disney stuff. They're setting it up so that they can also put it on TV at some point. But
That would make sense.
yeah.
See, I don't know. So that's it. But X-Men 97 has been out. And for these 3 weeks, since its premiere back on the 27th of March, I have really been struggling with the fact that everybody seems to love it. Maybe it was the 20th of March. I'm sorry, 20th to 27th, and then this past April 3rd, 4th. I'm not sure. It does not matter. It was the 3rd. I don't understand this like near universal approval and appeal that this series seems to have. And the only thing that I can come to as like an explanation is the nostalgia of it all, right? Trying to make these millennials, and CJ and I are both millennials, who really have like no future to look forward to because of how fucked up the world is, give them a utopia in their memories with which to thrive.
Remember how good things used to be? Yeah.
Yeah, right?
I mean,
like,
that's definitely part of the game, Dev. I mean, like that this is just an arm of the nostalgia conversation that we've had for years, you know.
Yeah.
They part of that nostalgia is leaning into childhood memories specifically because that was when we kind of didn't worry about other shit, right? Like if you want to bring somebody back to the safest point in their life, you bring them back to their childhood generally, right? I understand there's going to be
some people
out there that have
but
feelings about that statement, but like in general, that's your safest bet, right? You want to make somebody feel safe. You want to make somebody feel comfortable spending $60 on a toy or $10 a month on a subscription service. Like then you bring them back to when they felt like they were a little kid. I mean, that's been the business model for many a successful business.
Yeah. And yeah, we could point to a million things, but something about X-Men, and I will say this, the animated series, I watched it. I had Toy Biz figures, right? I had a brown suit Wolverine. As I look at my current brown suit Wolverine, who is not part of the calendar series, I just love this Krakatoan Wolverine because he's got a little beard going on underneath his mask, and it's kind of cute.
Mm-hmm.
Or my first appearance Wolverine, he's out because it's springtime now. I was part of it. Like, X-Men happened. But for me, I watched that first episode of the X-Men animated series, and it might not have been the first one, but I watched an episode of the series on TV, and then we went to the Searstown Mall in Leominster, Massachusetts. Local references, get you local work. And there was the X-Men 6-player arcade machine with a line out the door to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where my nostalgia with the X-Men lives, right? I've beaten that arcade game thousands of times. In 2020, for my birthday, we attempted and ultimately failed. No, I mean, we did it in 3 states, so I'm pretty proud of it. Dale and I have had this tradition. We haven't done it, well, since this January 4th, 2020, of the New England six pack, which is trying to do something significant in all 6 states of New England in one day, in a 24-hour period. And what we did to do that was we're going to beat the X-Men arcade game in all 6 New England states. And that was a fun idea. I really liked in New Hampshire. The only place that we could find one was at a barber shop. So I got a haircut, and then we beat the X-Men arcade game. Because like we didn't want to just go in there and be like, we want to play X-Men arcade machine. And that was cool because it was the freaking Japanese version of it with like the health pickups. And you can like earn extra mutant ability powers. And we did it. We did it in 3. We did it in Rhode Island. We did it in Massachusetts. And we did it in New Hampshire. And then it started to snow. Maine was going to be difficult anyway because like we couldn't find a location that had it. But like we had a friend who's like, come by my place and we can beat it there. And that'll count, right? So fun times in that. But then it started to snow and we didn't feel comfortable proceeding into Vermont and Connecticut as a blizzard was hitting in those states.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. But like I have a connection to the X-Men arcade game. And I feel like what I'm learning is that I just don't have that same nostalgic connection to the animated series, despite the fact that like I used to watch it on Saturday mornings. It was part of my routine. But I mean, I think X-Men has just grown to be so much more to me. I think there are better series than it. Wolverine and the X-Men. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Oh yeah, man. That was like the extreme like version in like the 2000s, right?
Well, there's X-Men Evolution that came out after the second movie. That was kind of the more extreme version. And then to follow that up,
that one always felt to me more like the Teen Titans story to the X-Men. Like it felt like X-Men Evolution was always about like the next generation of X-Men, you know, which makes sense. But
I mean, they introduced the character of Spike. They had a wholly new mutant that they created for the series. But then the other ones were like Nightcrawler and Shadowcat, who were again second generation X-Men, but they all were in high school with Cyclops and Jean Grey, and like Storm was a teacher at Xavier, but then they also went to like the normal high school in town where Mystique was the principal and stuff. Like that one was crazy, but there are some episodes of X-Men Evolution that really feel like they were embodying the extreme ideals of the 90s, like where everything's going to have an X in it and that.
But Wolverine and the X-Men was like almost had like an anime bend to the animation and stuff for it, didn't it?
Yeah,
like,
it was
at it.
Yeah, it was really well animated. What I liked about it is that multiple storylines were going on at the same time. Like Charles Xavier, it was revealed like 12 episodes in, was not dead. He was just transported to the future. So for Wolverine and the X-Men tuning in, you didn't know if you were going to get Wolverine in the quote-unquote present trying to be the leader of the X-Men, which is distinctly not really something you would expect Wolverine to ever do, right?
Right.
He is a goon. He is not a leader. But in the absence of everybody else, I mean, Charles Xavier, sorry, I know I'm very familiar with that guy, whatever I call him, Chuck, and I apologize. Like, he chose Wolverine as the one to take over in his absence. And it was really interesting to see him have to, like, soften and work with children, and it kind of fed off of his whole relationship with Rogue in the Bryan Singer movies.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, that one really worked for me. I mean, we've had all these movies that have done a lot for the X-Men. I mean, did you know that Magneto's helmet didn't block Charles Xavier's ability to read his mind until the 2000 X-Men film? That was a thing and wholly invented for that movie. But it feels like it's existed
I'm surprised
forever.
that it's wholly invented for that movie, but I also know that it was not really a thing that ever came up too often, or wouldn't have come up too often otherwise, in my understanding. Because as somebody else that ducked in and out of the cartoon series, the various cartoon series over the years, and then the movies were really kind of what more got me on board. But like, there was always to me this understanding that it was more about Charles and Magneto. Why am I forgetting Magneto's name right now?
Well, I didn't know if
But
you were
then
going to say Juggernaut, because Juggernaut's helmet is specifically so Charles Xavier cannot read his mind.
But the idea that the friendship between the two of them, it was always more about a line of respect than it was about an impossibility, right? Like that had always been the way that I had understood it. And then in the movie, when they mentioned that like the helmet would block stuff, it was like, oh, okay. What's wild is that becomes pretty much the canon, especially in the films, because we literally see them retrace that story in First Class, where there's the moment where Magneto begins wearing the helmet in order to stop Charles from being able to like track him and do all that shit.
Right, and he even gets that one from Kevin Bacon's character.
That's right.
Because he was wearing it to protect himself from Emma Frost, who was technically one of his minions in his little group, and then also so that no other psychic mutants could see into his mind. Is he Sebastian Shaw in that? I think that's the character he's playing, right? So like that is even something where it's not something Magneto had made, it's something that he weirdly inherited. And then once their friendship severed, he's like, I need to protect myself from you. I mean, God, First Class is such a good movie. I can't believe, like, I had a discussion with somebody about how much they hated that movie today. And I'm just like, not today, this past week, in time to talk about it on this episode. And I'm like, I don't know how you hate that movie, because that movie, like, reinvigorated the X-Men for me.
I mean, I love First Class. I will say there's definitely elements of it that are kind of like head scratching. Like, I mean, the death of Darwin in that movie is just wholly unexplainable to this very day.
I can love that movie and hate that the one X-Men who could not be killed was killed in such a weird way.
Well, I think that's more to the point, right? Is there's so much other good stuff in that movie that you kind of like, you kind of hit this moment of just like, yeah, but it's still fucking cool.
Like, and all they had to do to make that better is end credit scene where he comes back to life, right? I'm completely understandable with he's fed like a burning thing by Firefly, right? Like that's how he dies.
He basically gets a bunch of energy put into him.
Right.
I don't think it's Firefly. I think it's Shaw. I think like
I thought she took one of those little orbs of energy, like popped it in his mouth.
Maybe it is even that lame, but I thought it was. In my mind, it was Shaw doing what Shaw does with his energy transfer, and he just transferred so much energy into Darwin. Darwin's body couldn't handle it, and whatever.
He like turns to stone, right? Like that's the thing of it, and like all you have to do is have him wake up, because I understand it, right? From like a narrative standpoint, it's the Superman problem, where how can we have a threat when you have this person who literally adapts to whatever's thrown at them? I mean, Superman more adapts to whatever is, de rigueur in the comic books at the time. He didn't fly for a long time until someone else started flying. So it's one of those situations where, like, if you have someone like Darwin, there's no threat from the other team. So you want to sideline him, but, like, sideline him by having him, like, in a cocoon evolving. And then he emerges the way that Darwin looks in the comics. That's
maybe this just kind of speaks though to like where your lines are and what you want from the X-Men. And the X-Men cartoon show wasn't really it back in the day, and it seems like this new seasons of it is just not hitting it for you. Which, I mean, like, I feel bad that you're not in on like the zeitgeist and everything. I will tell you that the way these things go, I guarantee you that within the next year we're going to start hearing all these people popping up being like, I actually don't like it, so you won't be alone for long. Like I think that it's just hitting a lot of the right buttons for people, especially in terms of Marvel properties right now, because of how much it like unabashedly is not connected to the MCU and how they're not really trying to like make it this bigger thing. It's only focused on the X-Men, that kind of thing. Like there's a lot of the complaints that people have had about Marvel properties for the last few years that the show is actively doing, a lot of work to avoid. And I think people are also just appreciating that. I think the quality of it and like the way people are enjoying it, it can't be ignored. Like I think that no matter how we may feel about it, I have personally not dove much longer into it than the first 10 minutes of the first episode, because you had mentioned having some issues with it, and I just wanted to see if I was like where I would land. And I watched it a little bit, and I was instantly like, this is the kind of thing that I think I won't enjoy if I just watch it on my own. But I do have a funny feeling that I have family in the house that loves the old X-Men show, and I'm like, I have a funny feeling that if I'm sitting with somebody that is really into this, though, I could very easily
It'll
get
be
carried on
infectious. I
those
get that.
coattails,
Yeah.
right?
I
And like, so I want to enjoy a thing. I don't want to go into a thing and not enjoy it. So if I've got an opportunity to watch it in a way that I will enjoy it, I'm going to take it. But like to that, like I can't deny like the ways that some people around me are just gushing over it. Like they are just in love with it, and that's cool. And I'm really happy. And again, I think that there's a lot of aspects outside of just the quality of it too that I think are really getting people amped because they're seeing that opportunity for Disney Marvel to get it right, and it's the wildest thing because it's not even like Disney Marvel has completely screwed up at every turn, right? There's plenty of stuff that has happened in the Marvel universe post Disney getting involved that people love, adore, and hold up as like ideal for like what they want Marvel to be going forward. So like to say that the whole thing is just because it's this new version of Marvel owned by Disney, blah blah blah, is like a real that which is part of the outside of the X-Men stuff has been seemingly part of the story for a lot of people is they're just like, well, just like Disney come in and just ruin it for everybody, and it's like Disney's been involved since like Thor the Dark World. Like I don't know like what part of the Marvel experience has been quote unquote ruined by Disney that wasn't actually shaped by them in the first
wasn't
place.
Disney involved with Avengers? Like I feel like it's that as far back as that,
so
right?
they picked up Avengers. They picked up Marvel after Avengers had been filmed, and I believe that there was some talk about how they were going to jump in and handle marketing. So there is definitely some money on the books for them that is involved with Avengers. But it was Thor: The Dark World that was the first movie that was wholly filmed under
Which makes
them.
sense.
Even conceptually, I think even Thor: The Dark World had kind of existed before Disney had gotten involved. But yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that like everything in my mind was like, I think Avengers. So I appreciate that you being honest.
They
about
probably
that.
have their name on Disney Avengers. They probably do have their name on the Avengers because I do believe that they had purchased it in that. But I believe that if I'm remembering correctly, Avengers had already been, filming cast, and then all of a sudden there was all this talk about because like it was so much money, like what is Marvel going to do? And then suddenly Disney was like, we'll buy you up, and then suddenly it became the the story as we know it.
Exactly.
But yeah, like this idea that like I think that X-Men 97 is just hitting a lot of the really right notes for people right now. For fans of the old show, for people that are really kind of feeling, jaded by a lot of the other Disney Marvel properties, it's doing a lot of things right. And again, it's a bummer that like we can't be wholly on board with it as everybody else is because of how big it seems to be for everybody. But I don't want to begrudge anybody that's enjoying their time with that show. I love that people are having such a good time with it.
It's strange. I think for me, I'm finding a lot of people like you, like the royal we on a royal level. Everybody seems to be enjoying X-Men 97, but then everybody that I talk to about it is like, man, but the animation there's something off about it, or the voice acting, there's something off about it, or the script really seems like they're trying too hard in some way to appeal to people. Sure. Like even like right as you
just pointed out, but as we just talked about with First Class, right? Yeah. Like as a movie that I wholly love and I hold up as like a true X-Men story that really defines what I think of when I think of X-Men films, X-Men stories, X-Men characters, all of that. But also, there's a bunch of shit in that movie that's also just wholly stupid, right? But that's okay. I still enjoy it, right? And it's that idea that like, you got to figure out where your lines are and what you're okay with and what you're on board with.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I guess if I just wish that, like, if you actually have somebody who's enjoying it, then you can, like, kind of feed off of that enjoyment to do it. The fact that everybody that I go to like, try to have a discussion about X-Men 97 sort of feels the same way as me. I mean, granted, no greater confirmation bias of the fact that, like, we construct our own little bubbles in this world, right? Which is not great, but it's proof that it exists. But like, I just wish there were one person who's like, isn't it great? And I could be like, please tell me why you think it's great. And then I could maybe find that same enjoyment. I will say this, the Motendo episode, the first 11-minute episode on the 4th episode, right? And I was going to give it 4 episodes, really worked for me except for Mojo, because Mojo did not feel like the character Mojo that he feels in the show from before or in the comic books. he felt very much from the perspective of the 2020s, this character is being written. And I think that might be another thing that I'm trying to like come to terms with, is the fact that this is supposed to be the 5th season of the original animated series, hence the whole 97 of it. And when it doesn't jive with like how characters acted in that series is a little strange to me.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like it's connected. But that Motendo episode where Jubilee gets sucked into a video game and there's a bunch of homages to the arcade game from Konami, like that worked for me, right? There was that nostalgia for me. Did I figure out what was going to be the end of it, like, and all that? Yes, and it was a little less enjoyable because of that. And that's just because I've read X-Men books and I understand, like, science fiction stories about getting sucked into a video game. And that's me. I understand that that's me. But, holy, like, that's one that I showed to my mother. And we used to watch the X-Men series together. And she's like, I really didn't like Mojo, but I loved the visuals. I liked this. So that was a fun moment. I got to have that fun with it. But, like, the first episode, I didn't really connect with in a lot of ways. There's a moment in the second episode. I mean, like, are you okay with me spoiling something for you? Or do you want to, like, keep it natural?
Just make sure we're warning everybody at home.
So spoilers for the second episode of X-Men 97. Magneto, in the first episode, has been charged with now being in charge of the X-Men now that Charles Xavier has passed on. Further spoilers, Charles Xavier is not dead, but he must let the world think that he is dead while he goes to space to bang a space lady named Lilandra. I almost went Incredible Hulk there. That was for Bill Bixby. R.I.P. Bill Bixby. So Charles is in space, having sex with Space Lady. So now everybody thinks he's dead. And Magneto, in his will and testament, was left in charge of the X-Men. Now he's Magneto. By all accounts, in that world, he is a terrorist, right? It's kind of difficult to explain to people that this guy who was killing humans because they do not accept mutants is now going to be the head of the X-Men. So he is put on trial at the United Nations to see for his crimes, and if he is found guilty, then he will be locked up. He, like, surrenders himself to the UN. He says, I am willing to stand trial for this. The whole episode, in a lot of really gross ways, kind of mirrors the January 6th siege on the Capitol building, because there are protesters outside who, when they do not like the way that it looks like the court is going, they break in and all sorts of other crazy stuff happens. But, like, there is a distinct fervor in the world regarding anti-mutant sentiments now that Charles Xavier is gone. At the same time, Cyclops and Jean Grey, who is pregnant, are at the hospital because she has gone into labor. And the doctor at the hospital says, I'm not delivering your baby. I've seen what can happen during mutant births, and I don't want to put myself into jeopardy. Right? Some people lose control of their powers, and I'm not comfortable putting myself into that situation. So then, without thinking about it, Scott Summers looks at Rogue and goes, Rogue, implying touch this guy, gain all of his midwife powers, and deliver our baby. And that feels so un-X-Men to me, Sejin.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that he was saying touch Jean Grey so that she'd be powerless for the birth.
No.
But, okay.
It was steal this guy's ability to deliver a baby. Rogue, who's afraid of touching non-mutants for fear that she will murder them. And she's like, I don't know, if I accidentally touch your baby, I could kill your baby. Also showing no regard for this human guy who has a semi-reasonable fear that he's presenting, while hatred against mutants is at an all-time high. Like, that was one of those moments where I'm like, I do not feel comfortable about this at all.
Yeah, I mean, without seeing it, I can't really talk.
Yeah,
too much
exactly.
about
I understand
it.
that,
It
but
definitely sounds challenging. I will say this: the January 6th stuff you're talking about sounds like fucking X-Men 97's bread and butter.
Yo, yeah,
Like,
that's a big part of
we're
it.
gonna talk about the politics that are currently going on in the world today while using the X-Men characters, and yeah, that's gonna be a little. And lo and behold, we're gonna show like levels of nuance that maybe you are not comfortable with. Like, is a wild, but also very much on par with what that show
Yeah,
used to be.
that
So
part doesn't bother me. The part that bothers me is the fact that like it needs to be X-Men 97 because the word terrorist referring to Magneto as a terrorist in 1997 hits different than if you were referring to him as a terrorist post something like 9/11. If that makes any sense. Like they're like the former mutant terrorists and I'm like, "Oh, that's why it's set in 97 because that word means something different now." But also, I don't know if they would have used that word in the original series. And I'm fine with it. Like, them using things, the whole January 6th of it, it's only kind of scary because of the fact that, like, this is real world being represented. And, like you said, like, some people might not have understood the nuance of it before. And like, there's some great stuff with Magneto in it, but
yeah,
but
this is also kind of the first real world thing that they're tackling that kind of personally affects you. You know,
yeah,
racism is not necessarily something that you would have like a handhold to really kind of get these kind of squishy feelings about when they were talking about that. You know, like, or the AIDS crisis or like whatever like thing that they're kind of, you know, breaching. You know, but this is kind of the first time that you're watching it and being like, oh, this is like my world.
Yeah, and I mean that's a fair point, but I was really kind of like, the X-Men seem to hold themselves as highest power, and the fact that like, yeah, Rogue, just steal this guy's abilities to deliver a baby, this human guy, like, just do it because we need to get this done. Like, I just, it hit so weird. It felt so un-X-Men, right? I don't know, and that's me. And then also,
I don't know, man. When I think of the X-Men, I think about them talking about the ethical implications and the moral ambiguity of these people with powers in a world with people that don't. It sounds like that's exactly what they're doing.
I don't know, but I don't know. That is,
and like Scott being the overreacting asshole, demanding that a younger mutant abuse their powers because it's for the greater good. Sounds like exactly what I think of when I think of Scott Summers.
That's everybody's in love with Cyclops again now, and I think it's really funny that all he had to do was gymnastics. Yeah, I don't. It's the one part where I'm just like, this went to a level. I don't know if it makes me uncomfortable, but it felt like the nuance was kind of missing. Like, there was no discussion about it. It was just like, okay. And I don't know. It's the part of the series that sticks out to me. Well, there's one other part too, but I don't want to spoil that one because they're working through it. And in a lot of ways, it's the most interesting story while also being definitively the most out of character for a particular character. Like, in ways that is not how they would ever react to this situation. This is crazy that you've had to do this to tell an interesting story. And maybe I'm completely wrong with that. Maybe I've always misread the character, but their reaction to something that happens to them.
There's also something to be said that I don't want a character that always does exactly what I expect them to do. That's boring, right? Like, people acting out of character is what makes interesting
What makes it an interesting
happen.
adaptation.
Especially because if, like you said, they are then going back like, it's not like they do something out of character and the world moves on. If they do something out of character and then everything comes about how, hey, you did this thing that was totally not what we would have expected you to do. What the fuck? Like, yeah, that's compelling to me. Again, I haven't seen it, so like, I maybe there is some stuff in the ways in which it's presented where it doesn't land. On the other hand, I will say the amount of praise the show is getting, it sounds like while it might not be landing for you, it seems to be exactly landing for a lot of other people.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I don't know.
It's just that's the thing I really hang my hat on. I guess this, apropos of nothing, and then to like kind of wrap this up, because I mean, I'm gonna finish watching this series. Like I said, they kind of moved the needle a little bit with Motendo. If one member of the X-Men, as you know, the X-Men, who you think would never leave the Xavier School, who do you think that would be?
I don't know. They all leave at some point.
Right, but I mean, like, who would be like semi-devoted to it?
maybe Nightcrawler after he gets really up his own preachy ass about like protecting the kids.
Interesting.
Maybe.
That's interesting. We'll revisit this after you've seen it. That's what I'll say. That's a good. I like that. I really enjoy that. I mean, is there anything?
But I mean, like it can't be Rogue. Literally, the movies are about her running away. It's not Logan. Logan always runs away. Jean Grey and Scott pop off on their own all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, right. So there you go. Right.
Beast, maybe Beast would be the weird one to leave, but that's only because he has. But no, even in the movies, Beast does this whole thing where he kind of works in DC in order to protect the school. So I don't know, man.
I'm really loving all these characters that you're naming. That's what I'm gonna say. Loving it. But I mean, I think we should put it to bed until the rest of it. There's 6 more episodes. Hopefully at that time you've seen some, so I can actually get your feeling on it. But those first 10 minutes, I don't know. There's like some parts that are like right on the nose in those first 10 minutes, but then also there's like weird animation stuff. The voices, the voice acting hits me so strange in some of the things. But then I also think that like, are they doing that on purpose? The second episode ends with a very distinct amount of people in the room. And then the third episode starts and a person who was not there at the end of the second episode is suddenly there. And I'm like, either they're playing on the poor continuity of old Saturday morning cartoon shows, or that was like just a huge oversight on their part.
Yeah.
And if it's the first one, that's cool.
The biggest feeling that I had, the reason that I kind of had to put a pause on it was, and this is what made me think maybe it'll be better if I'm watching it in a group or with people, is it just felt really dorky, I guess. And when you talk about like maybe they're just playing into what this show was, I can tell you that is one of the biggest reasons why I thought maybe before this came out, I was going to do a complete rewatch of the old series. And I had a little bit of a hard time sticking to that because of how silly that show got. And so like my feelings going into this show were like in that first 10 minutes of that episode were like, yeah, this feels actually too much like the old show to the point where I'm kind of not digging it. But watching it with somebody that liked the old show, that might be like really like the old show. That might be something that gets me on board, you know?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I don't know. I just characters and way that they've been represented and the fact that like this is supposed to be a 5th season, they do not feel the same. And that is probably my biggest strike against it. And I don't know, but that's it. Have you out there in the world listening to the show watched X-Men 97? Join our Discord and let us know what you have to say about it. I am begging to find somebody who's enjoying X-Men 97 the way the rest of the world seems to be presenting their enjoyment of it. So if you're there, join our Discord, or you can always send an email to thissayreport@gmail.com and let us know what you think there. Or if you're one of our YouTube viewers, thank you to everybody who watches on YouTube, put a comment down there, right? Like, subscribe, all those things. Smash that subscribe button, right? To be just the worst type of stereotype of a YouTuber. Anything else that you want to talk about, Sejan, before we end this episode?
We had a 3 monkey movie mix this weekend that we had Planet of the Apes. Did that one come out yet, or
no,
is that
Planet
one coming
of the Apes
out?
is next. It's this month. We have a 3 monkey mix up this month. I don't think Planet of the Apes came
because
out
we
yet.
got Kong versus Godzilla, we got Monkey Man, and we got Planet of the Apes that came out. That was weird. That was all.
I haven't seen any of them. One of them I want to see. 2 of them, I'm actually interested in all 3 of them, but for very different reasons. So get ready for monkey movies sometime on the Say Report. But I have to be honest, like, as much as I've loved going to films, right? I saw Ghostbuster Frozen Empire. I have tickets to see The Fall Guy. I wasn't inspired to go out to anything this April. I don't know what that is about it. All stuff I want to see, but like sequel to Kong versus Godzilla, that feels like an at-home movie now because of watching it at home before.
No, the big one for me is Monkey Man. Like, I really want to go support that movie. I want to go see it in the theater, like all of that. I mean, with Dev Patel having a writing and directing credit as well as starring in it, Jordan Peele doing the whole producing thing on it. That is, if there's a movie this month that's going to get me out to a theater, it's going to be that one.
I think the big issue is that, like, I've been taking off Fridays to go see movies, and I don't feel comfortable doing it right now as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do. Monkey Man is the one I am the most interested in. I will admit that. But its release being April 5th was just like, it's too close. It's too close to everything else. Especially, I have my dental procedure on Monday. Oh, maybe I can do that tomorrow if there's an early one, or I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But I'm finally, the long, strange teeth journey is supposed to end on Monday. So I felt weird like taking a 4-day weekend with that.
Yeah, no, man. Well, good luck on that one.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And then Planet of the Apes. I mean, I loved that trilogy that happened. I don't know if I'm ready to go back to that world. I wasn't really excited for it.
I do have to say the turn, not like a surprise or twist or anything like that, but like the turn in that series to now really kind of get to the quote unquote Planet of the Apes. Like, I'm very curious. I mean, they're gonna have to remake the original now at this point, right? Like Timothy Chalamet like playing like the guy from the past that shows up or something, right? Like, they've just gotten so far down that rabbit hole. I'm just really curious to see where they go.
Yeah. And also you have that whole Timothy Chalamet thing that blew my mind, but I'd like to see Dune 2 before talking about that. And again, because I saw the first one at home, like I'm not like in a rush to see it in theaters, knowing that it's probably a movie you should see in theater, but the first one just feels like an at-home film. So we're seeing now, at least in me, and I don't know of in other people, how the straight to home releases of theatrical films is affecting the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very interesting to me. But that's something that we're collecting data on. We'll be back. I'm seeing The Fall Guy, though. And that's just because I liked the original series so much.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know. So I think that's that. 3 movie monkeys. Let's confirm that before we do. Vamp a little bit while I confirm if Planet of the Apes came out as well.
The other big one coming out that I definitely will probably be waiting to see at home, but I'm also really kind of interested in is Abigail has started popping up everywhere. The new vampire one. The preview for it just looks utterly ridiculous, which definitely puts me in like the right mood for it, I think. Nice. But really interesting to see Michelle Barra in another big movie with everything going on with her, especially one that is being touted as spiritually connected to the Scream series, with like every poster being like, from the producers who brought you Scream 6, and it's just like, whoa, okay, everything that we know about what happened with her in the Scream series makes this kind of a really curious way to advertise this film series.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen anything because I've been avoiding it, but that makes me very interested to see it. I will admit that 100%. Let's see. No, so it's Kong versus Godzilla was March 29th, and then Monkey Man was this past weekend, and then Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes does not come out till May 10th.
Oh, May.
They are shooting for the big one. But there's 3 monkey movies that is coming out this year. You're not wrong about that. Imagine if they dropped them all on the same weekend. I mean, that's an incredible triple feature, knowing nothing about Monkey Man. I will say that. But again, Godzilla Kong, like, I'm excited because the last one was awesome. However,
I mean, I love the whole fucking Thanos glove they're apparently giving him. Like, that whole meme going around has me super excited. So
I like Pink Atomic Breath Godzilla. That really works for me. And it's good. It's a good little cast, and I am excited to see the film. But again, it's one that, because the last 2 I saw at home, I did not see King of the Monsters in the theater, and then I saw Godzilla vs. Kong as a straight to home release. Like, those feel, I mean, there's always been something of like a home viewing experience for the Godzilla movies. Ditto kind of Planet of the Apes. I mean, the first one that I ever saw tip to tail was Escape from the Planet of the Apes at 1 a.m. on AMC.
Nice. And
that was, I watched it with the commercials and I loved it. So like that also has like this weird at home thing. And then Monkey Man, I don't know. I just like, I'm trying to avoid everything because I want to be surprised by it. But again, like it released on the wrong Friday for me. And support
like I said, I just want to make sure that movie gets the support that I like. I'm very excited about it from like on a meta level, and also the movie itself just looks like it's going to be a blast. So yeah, I don't know. But that's it for us for this week, I think.
Yeah, I think that covers everything. Again, we're meeting. We'll have more news for you next episode. I'm going to definitely do that thing that I said I'm going to do. Oh, Curb Your Enthusiasm finale. I'll have thoughts on that to share, even if Sejin and his increasing weird feelings about Larry David, it should be an interesting dichotomy from us. But until then, you can find us on the Discord. Again, links to join our Discord are on all of our social media stuff. Or if you send an email to thesayreport@gmail.com, I'll send you a personalized invite to join. And again, if you do want to spend something specifically for myself or Sejin, thesayreport@gmail.com is still the best place to do that. Just make sure you put our names in the subject line if you don't want me to read something specifically for Sejin, and vice versa. I don't know why I said it like that. But until next time, without anything further, William, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Sejin Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.